Thank you, Senator Grassley. I've been asked to accommodate one of my colleagues here, former chairman, and to go slightly out of order and to bring this nomination of Judge Michelle Childs to the D.C. Circuit first. And I'm going to grant that request. With 16 years of judicial, practical, administrative law experience, Judge Childs is highly qualified for this position. Since 2010, she's presided over almost 5,000 cases, including 60 trials as a district court judge. 4 years before that, she presided over thousands of cases during her years as a state court judge in South Carolina. Brings practical experience with administrative law to the D.C. Circuit, which hears more administrative law cases than any other. Prior to joining the bench, Judge Giles administered federal and state programs as the deputy director of a South Carolina agency, administrative law judge for the South Carolina Workers' Compensation Commission. She's been rated well qualified by the ABA, and I'd also note that Senator Graham strongly supports her nomination. I hope all my colleagues will join me in supporting her. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on her behalf? Senator Graham. The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Now we'll consider the nomination of Nancy Abudo to the 11th Circuit. She's been rated well qualified by the ABA. A civil rights and voting rights litigator for over 15 years, she has significant trial and appellate experience, including arguing 5 cases before the Federal Court of Appeals. As a civil rights litigator, she's dedicated a significant part of her life to defending religious liberty. For example, she represented a Hasidic Jewish police officer who alleged he was forced to work on the Sabbath and to violate religion-based dietary belief. And as she explained at her hearing, as a voting rights litigator, she has, quote, represented a lot of Christian individuals, in particular whose faith has served as foundation for how they've been able to continue in their march for access to equal justice. Some of my Republican colleagues have criticized Ms. Abudo for statements she made as an advocate in the past. This is an issue that comes up frequently before this committee. During the last administration, the committee considered multiple judicial nominees who had spent their careers as advocates at conservative legal organizations and as advocates for conservative causes. In those cases, my Republican colleagues stressed that nominees should not be held to account for advocacy they undertook as an attorney, whether that advocacy was in the form of a brief or op-ed or other public commentary. At the same time, Republican members of the committee defended those nominees, lauding them for their zealous advocacy. And Republicans took Trump nominees at their word when they testified under oath they understood the difference between a role of an advocate and a judge. Ms. Abudo was asked that very same question under oath, and here's what she said. I understand that as an advocate, your responsibility is to zealously represent your client's interest within the bounds of law. However, as a judge, as I stated, it is to be fair, it is to be impartial, it is to make sure your decisions are clear and well-reasoned. My commitment to this committee is that if I'm fortunate to be confirmed, that's the kind of judge I'll be. Now, I find it hard to believe that Republican judicial nominees can set aside their role as advocates, but Democratic nominees cannot. It would be regrettable if there is a double standard. There's also been talk about Ms. Abudo's work with the Southern Poverty Law Center. As she explained repeatedly at both her hearing under oath and in written questions, she has no involvement, none, with how the SPLC designated hate groups. Instead, her role was in the legal department defending religious freedom, free speech, and voting rights. To impute the organization's work designating hate groups to her is not only misleading, I don't believe it's fair. Finally, I want to address a request from committee Republicans to delay consideration of her nomination until a 3-judge panel in Alabama concluded its investigations into allegations that a litigation team engaged in, quote, judge shopping. Ms. Abudo has already made it abundantly clear she played no role whatsoever in this alleged incident. And she wrote in responding to a written question, I was not involved in the decision to voluntarily dismiss the Lidinsky case or the decision to refile. Therefore, I cannot explain the decision to refile. More broadly, as my Republican colleagues have acknowledged, Ms. Abudo unequivocally condemned judge shopping at her career. Given those responses, unequivocal responses, we will proceed with the vote today. Does anyone seek recognition on Ms. Abudo's nomination? On favorably reporting the nomination of Nancy Abudo to the U.S. Circuit Judge for the 11th Circuit, the clerk will call the roll. Committee's recorded a tie vote on Ms. Abudo's nomination to be U.S. Circuit Judge for the 11th Circuit pursuant to Section 3, subsection 1A of Senate Resolution 27 of the 117th Congress. I'll transmit to the Secretary of the Senate a notice of this tie vote. Under Section 3, Section 1B of that resolution, either the majority or minority leader may then make a motion to discharge the nomination. The next nomination is Judge Anna D'Alba, Eastern District of California. Served as Superior Court Judge for Fresno Superior Court 4 years, presided over thousands of matters and 7 bench trials. Prior to joining the bench, Judge D'Alba spent 11 years in private practice in Fresno. In addition to expansive state court practice, she also tried several administrative law trials. She made partner at the firm in 5 years. A native of San Joaquin Valley, Judge D'Alba received her BA with the highest honors and her JD from the University of California at Berkeley. The American Bar Association has rated Judge D'Alba qualified. She enjoys the strong support of 2 of our colleagues on the committee, Senator Feinstein and Padilla. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on her behalf? On favorably reporting the nomination of Anna Isabel D'Alba to be U.S. District Judge for the Eastern District of California, the clerk will call the roll. The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Next, we consider Nusrat Chowdhury, nominated to the Eastern District of New York. Ms. Chowdhury is a graduate of Columbia University and Yale Law School, clerked on the district and circuit court levels, served as legal director for the ACLU, rated well qualified by the American Bar Association. Last week, my colleagues on the other side asked that I schedule a second hearing. I have denied that. Their concerns about Ms. Chowdhury stem from an exchange she had with Senator Kennedy during her hearing. Senator Grassley referred to it as well. Senator Kennedy asked Ms. Chowdhury whether she had previously made a statement that, quote, the killing of unarmed black men by police happens every day in America. To be clear, such a claim is unequivocally false. I believe the basis for Senator Kennedy's question was a tweet from a third party discussing her comments at a panel discussion 7 years ago. Ms. Chowdhury said she didn't recall making the statement, had a back and forth with Senator Kennedy, which I witnessed and heard. Since her hearing and after further review, she sent the committee a letter and said, quote, I did not make this statement. I strongly disavow this statement. I regret not disavowing this statement during my hearing, and to be clear, the statement is not true. She went on to say, such statement is consistent with my deep respect for law enforcement, appreciation for the risks they take, and the important role they play in advancing public safety. It does not reflect the work I've done in partnership with law enforcement and their counsel to advance constitutional, effective, and safe policing in cities nationwide. In fairness, this is a challenging situation for the nominee. There was no record or transcript of the panel discussion she participated in, just a tweet from someone who was apparently in the audience. I've read her letter to the committee. She disavowed the statement. I believe she deserves the benefit of the doubt, and don't just take it from me. Take it from those who know her. For example, Thornton, Colorado Police Chief Terrence Garden wrote, while my encounters with members of the local ACLU were often adversarial, resulting from what I believe to be a bias against policing, Ms. Chowdhury's approach was markedly different. I find it hard to reconcile the measured, reasoned attorney that I met with the inaccurate and unsophisticated statement attributed to her. Further statements supported her position and what she stated to the committee. I'll be supporting her nomination. Does anyone seek recognition to speak on this nomination? On favorably reporting the nomination of Nusrat Jahan Chowdhury to be U.S. District Judge for the Eastern District of New York, the clerk will call the roll. The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. Finally, we consider the nomination of Natasha Merle to the Eastern District of New York, an experienced litigator at every level of our legal system, undergraduate degree from the University of Texas at Austin, law degree from New York University School of Law, completed 2 clerkships in the Southern District of New York and the Eastern District of New York. She devoted her early career to representing indigent clients, went on to work in private practice, including civil litigation. Since 2016, has worked at the NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund, devoting her practice to equal justice under the law. Taught at 2 of the nation's top law schools, Columbia and New York University. Tremendous amount of courtroom experience, rated well qualified by the American Bar Association. Does anyone seek recognition on behalf of Ms. Merle's nomination? On favorably reporting the nomination of Natasha Merle to be U.S. District Judge for the Eastern District of New York, the clerk will call the roll. The nomination will be favorably reported to the floor. We now consider S. 3635, Public Safety Officer Support Act. The bill's sponsors have filed a manager's amendment. I'll speak briefly about the bill before calling up the manager's amendment. I want to start by highlighting a very disturbing fact shared by Senator Padilla with this committee just last week, and that is that more police officers die by suicide than by any other cause in the line of duty. The tragedy of officer suicide is felt by many, including the other officers who serve with them. It's particularly devastating for the families. In 2016, April Scherzer was in bed with her four-month-old twin daughters when she heard a gunshot. She ran downstairs and discovered her husband, Max, who had taken his life with a service weapon. April said of her husband's death, and I quote, "My day begins with that gunshot. I relive it over and over again, up until now, up until this present moment." Her husband, Max, was 36 years old and been a police officer 12 years before taking his life. I want to read a letter to the committee by a young girl, Riley Giles. She's writing about her dad, Corporal Jonathan Giles, served as an officer in a small police department in California. Here's what she said. "My dad passed away on November 7th, 2018 by suicide. My relation with my dad was super close, and when he died, the world was crushed at my age of 8 years of age. After my dad passed, his department said that they would be there for us. They were not. Officers that die by suicide are not treated the same as officers that die in the line of duty. I'm only 12 years old, and it hurts me so bad to watch my dad and other families get treated differently because of the way their loved ones passed. The families of officers who died by suicide should get the same benefits as families of officers that passed in the line of duty." That is a heartbreaking story from a little girl. It's time to take off the stigma of officers dying by suicide. It's time we honor these officers and their families. That's why this bill is so important. It extends the benefits of Public Safety Officer Benefits Program to job-related mental health incidents. I want to make one other point here. There was a valid question raised by Senator Grassley that we looked into as to whether this in any way encouraged suicide. We went to the advocacy groups who deal with this issue with real care, and they said it did not. They felt that it was more important for us to move forward and to help these families, and that concern they did not share. And that's the reason we went forward with scheduling this bill today. I support it. I understand there's a manager's amendment, OLL 22474. I'll now call up. With no objection, the manager's amendment is adopted. Senator Cornyn, do you wish to speak about the bill? I agree, Senator, and we treated the question seriously and carefully. And as Senator Cornyn has indicated, went to the mental health groups to get their considered opinion. And I feel that moving forward is the right thing to do. But I don't question your raising that issue. I think it's a valid question. If no one else, Senator Klobuchar. Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. And I'd like to ask consent to enter into the record a letter which I think is very important from major mental health organizations in support of this bill. And if you just bear with me for a minute, I'd like to read something to you that I found particularly to be a revelation. It is also, this is from many different organizations, almost 20 different organizations. It is also crucial that we support the families of public service officers impacted by suicide, many of whom face financial struggle. Research tells us that survivors of suicide loss face a higher risk of suicide after the death of their loved one. Moreover, financial hardship is a major risk factor for suicide. It is for these reasons that the undersigned national organizations come together in support of this urgently needed legislation to assist these families in time of grief and help avert future tragedies. Without objection, I'll enter that in the record. Anyone else seek recognition? If not, on favorably reporting S. 3635 as amended by the manager's amendment, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Majority of the members present having voted in the affirmative, the ayes have it. The bill will be favorably reported to the floor. And with that, this meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee is adjourned.